Creators and Coffee was started as a gathering out of Hildegard College's Entrepreneur Lab. And so at Hildegard College, we think deeply and we create boldly. Hildegard is for people who are wanting to get the wisdom of history's greatest thinkers in the Foundations of Thought program, and then also be involved in an entrepreneur lab where they're not only getting that wisdom, but they're applying it into real world ventures. Founding things, leading things, creating culture, creating good. The core theme of this semester is what is the good? We orient around some core questions. What is the good? What makes a society just? What's the human condition? Who is God? And these questions are deep foundational questions about how we exist in the world and how we live in the world. And so this morning we're going to explore the question, which is the theme for this semester, what is the good? I just want to give a shout out to Hildegard. If you're interested, scan the QR code right there. Or talk to one of our students over here. We've got 3 lined up right here together. Good. And Jonathan Murillo, raise your hand in the back. He's the director of our Entrepreneur Lab. If you're interested in any of our programs or in the possibility of joining a creators cohort, which is something that we are forming a waiting list for right now, then talk to Jonathan and we will get you on that list. I also want to just mention Fieldwork is the space that you're in. If you're not familiar, this is a shared workspace of people who are oriented around the common good. At Hildegard, we call this our entrepreneurship ecosystem. And so if you are co-working here, you're immersed with other people who are pursuing the same types of thoughts and passions and beliefs. And Fieldwork co-working today is free. So if you brought a laptop, or even if you didn't, just head back there. You can talk to me, or Vanessa is in the chair back here, or Eli's working the sound back there. Get set up with co-working, and you can stick around. Anytime we do a Creators and Coffee, co-working is free for the day if you register and join us. Those are also our co-working packages if you're interested in joining fully as a member. What else do we have? What are you celebrating today? We always start with what is good. That's on theme for the question for the semester. So turn to somebody next to you, just like one person, or 3 if you're oriented around 3 people. Quick 1 minute, just say one thing you're celebrating, what's the good that you're bringing in today? What's something that's good that you're celebrating from your life, your work, your leadership, let's say in the past week. So we are gonna get into today's interview with Justin Wheeler. Thanks for being here, Justin. Justin is the founder of Fundraise, a donor development platform for nonprofits, and we've known each other for maybe a decade at this point. I think you were working at Link before that. I'll let him talk a little bit more about his history in the nonprofit world, starting organizations for good and his vision for what is the good. But I'm just really excited that you're here and sharing your wisdom of working with nonprofits for a long time now. So Justin, thanks for being here. Start us out with your answer. I know this is a deeply philosophical question, but what is the good for you? How would you answer that just in kind of a summary form to get us like maybe a little bit oriented to you, and maybe in that describe what is the good and what's that looked like in your career and vocation?
I think, so personally, the way that I think define what is the good is being able to be there and to love on people that don't share your beliefs, your ideas, your background. They look different than you. People that maybe are more unnaturally hard for you to love. And I think that it's easy to be good to your community and to the people you're close with, but the ones that maybe disagree with you, whether it's politically, whether it's religious, whatever it might be, I think the good is being able to find common ground with anyone. And I think now more so than ever, the world needs that. So that's how I would define it. I think personally, I think when as you sort of think about it through the lens or the context of business, I always think of it as a double bottom line, right? Like when you're running a business, you have to have a healthy, sustainable business. And at the same time, you should think about how you get there is not because you're an amazing CEO or an amazing executive. It's because you've built a great team, and the team has helped you get there. And so when you think about like the bottom line, I would think about that as how do we like look out for our team and so forth. And there's a lot of other layers to it, but when you're looking at it through the context of business, I would look at it from that perspective too.
I want to explore that a little bit later, because you've talked about what is the good for your employees, for your team. Before we go to that, I would love to hear a little bit more of your context so Invisible Children, Link, Fundraise today.
Yeah.
Just give us an overview of how you've thought about what is the good, maybe contextually in those nonprofits that you've helped found or led in.
Absolutely. So prior to starting my company, I spent 15 years working in the nonprofit space, starting 2 different nonprofit organizations. Sophomore year in college, I was sitting in a room probably like this size, and this guy that was around my age had just gotten back from Uganda and was sharing some videos of his time in Uganda. And it was focused on like these kids that were being abducted by this rebel army and were being forced to fight and to go back to their villages and kill their parents. It was crazy, and I was just shocked that something like this was happening. At this point, the only place I've gone outside of the U.S. was Mexico, and so I just remember having this feeling that this is a turning point in whatever I thought I was going from a career perspective, and all I want to do is help these children no longer have to fight in this war. And so after that documentary, I went and bought a ticket to Uganda, not knowing anyone in Uganda, not knowing why. I'm super ignorant, but I was so compelled by it, and that became sort of the launching pad of building an organization called Invisible Children, where our goal was to bring awareness and to end sort of Africa's longest standing war. And through that context, working in the nonprofit space, it's just sort of 6 degrees of separation. You start learning and about different causes and issues. And I started learning about North Korea. And I was shocked that I knew nothing about North Korea other than they had a crazy dictator with lots of nuclear weapons. I didn't realize that there was 24 million people living in this country that were undergoing some of the worst human rights violations in the world. And so my wife and I, 3 months after we got married, decided to quit our jobs and to move to the border of North Korea and China, and to basically learn as much as we could about this issue. And when we were there, we had learned that 300,000 North Korean refugees had escaped the country, living and hiding in China, and we're looking for a way out. And it was a capital crime to leave North Korea, and still is a capital crime to leave North Korea. And so over the next 10 years, we worked alongside some really great people at Liberty in North Korea to build what's known today as the modern day Underground Railroad. It's a passage of 3,000 miles moving North Korean refugees from the border of North Korea and China all the way to Southeast Asia. And it's all done, I call extra legal because these individuals should be seen as refugees and given asylum. But to move them 3,000 miles, you have to do so extra legally. And over 1,000 today, we've helped over 1,000 North Koreans actually make it to safety and resettle to the South Korea and the United States. It was during this 15 years in building organizations. I've always loved technology and the role technology can play in helping scale your efficiency and your operations and your ability to reach more people. I remember thinking at the time of the first couple years in Invisible Children, it really is a terrible experience for most people when they want to give to a charity. How do we solve this problem? And that's sort of what led me to start Fundraise 10 years ago, was to help more organizations like Invisible Children, like Liberty in North Korea, be able to scale their work through technology. And that's what I've been doing for the past basically 10 years.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me when I actually saw you pitch Liberty in North Korea at Praxis.
Oh, yeah.
However, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, or whatever that was. One of the things that struck me about that is just what you shared today, is how bold you were to just kind of courageously go outside of what normal people would do, I guess, outside of comfort, outside of your own control, outside of things that you had experienced before. That's, I think, a unique characteristic. we talk about that at Hildegard, and we have a core purpose assessment. That's one of the foundational parts of the Entrepreneur Lab, is helping us identify our zone of genius, the intersection of what's our zone of genius, what moves your spirit, what does the world need, and what value do you have to offer to that. Yeah. How would you characterize that for yourself? What's your core purpose kind of in that through line through all those organizations?
I would say that because working in Invisible Children in Liberty, North Korea, these were really hard, challenging issues. And then, building a company, a startup, is not a walk in the park either. And so I think that when I think back over the last 15, 20 years, I would say it's my sense of optimism that has helped me build these organizations and this company. I think that as an entrepreneur or as a social good entrepreneur, you're gonna constantly be faced with challenges that seem impossible to overcome. And the number one rule I would live by in my startup and organization is never say die, right? If you feel like it's time to shut down, give yourself another 3 months. And I think that sort of, I would say, is how I would characterize the genius. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but a challenge doesn't scare me, and nothing seems impossible. Yeah. And I think that's where really I put a lot of stock in. Yeah.
I would love to dig into that a little bit more, because I've been thinking a lot and talking with some of the community members here about, Seth Godin wrote a book called The Dip. Yep. And it effectively is what you just described. When you think you're done, you probably aren't. And there are a few different reasons for why that might be true. And a lot of times it's discipline, consistency, just continue to move through, continuing to believe in the vision. And you said optimism is one of your superpowers, and that helps you move through. Maybe just reflect on that. How have you seen other people move through the dip? Maybe how have you led in a way where others have had the opportunity to move through those spaces where it feels like you're in this liminal space and it's not working? And maybe even just reflect on when is it okay to say no versus just try to continue to push through?
There's a lot there. Yeah. I think what I would say is, first and foremost, to get through the dip, you have to be extremely obsessed over whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve, right? And so whether that's through the context of a business, through a nonprofit, through a project, you have to be obsessed with the problem and solving it, because if you're not, as soon as you hit hard times, you're on to the next thing, right? And so that's the first thing, is how obsessed, how much do you care about the problem that you're trying to solve? And then the second thing I would say is, especially if you're the leader of the vision, or responsible for the vision, you have to be willing to sacrifice. And that's inevitable. I think whether you're starting anything, there is just a level of sacrifice that you have to be willing to take. That could be socially. You just may not have time initially to have the social life that you want if you're really trying to start something meaningful and trying to solve hard problems, right? So it could mean financially, it could mean lots of different things. But I think sacrifice, I would say, is if you're someone that's willing to sacrifice whatever it takes to address the problem that you're trying to solve, you'll get past the dip. And I've seen that to be a through line with a lot of founders and entrepreneurs, is their ability to sacrifice when it really mattered.
Yeah, and I've heard you say before too, simultaneously, you got to fall in love with the problem and be obsessed with the problem. Most founders have experienced the problem that they're trying to solve. I mean, are there other ways to find yourself obsessed with the problem, falling in love with the problem in the way where it's I have to solve this thing?
I think some of the best companies have been a result of the founders living through the problem, right? And understanding the problem intimately. And so I think that's helpful. I think that doesn't mean you can't go off and start something. But if you're starting something from the perspective of, I want to make a ton of money, that's not going to be effective. Right? And you're when you get to the dip, you're going to bail, right? You need to find your passion in terms of the problem. And so I would say, whether it's something you've personally, intimately experienced, or something that you've gained domain expertise, through experiences, then I think that's important. But yeah, I would. Some of the best companies are people that have solved problems that they themselves, have had to experience.
Yeah. I'm just curious if you have that problem, like, we're talking about this and that's clearly identified in your head, what problem in the world do you exist to solve? Could you just raise your hand? Okay. Yeah, I feel like even today, I'm getting more clear about what that problem is and all of what orients around like my core purpose in the world. Can you just talk about like maybe how that has evolved for you? Because I heard that kind of through lines like, oh, you helped found Invisible Children, and then Fundraise. So there were a set of problems that you were kind of moving through.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it goes back to sort of where do I find the most fulfillment? And it was an interesting transition going from 15 years building nonprofits to a for-profit. Fundraise is a venture-backed company. We've raised about $40 million in venture capital. So it's a very different environment going from everyone who is at the organization is there for the common purpose of liberty in North Korea or Invisible Children, and then starting a company that's for-profit that has other stakeholders outside of the founding team. And I think that initially I was worried about losing my sense of like purpose because it felt like I was like going to, even though it's a startup, but going to corporate America, and felt like my soul was just gonna die. But actually something interesting happened was as we started gaining traction and working with organizations. I mean, Invisible Children was singular focused, Liberty in North Korea was singular focused, and as we started bringing on customers all around the country, we were powering some of the most like amazing missions, and being able to play a small part in helping those organizations scale and be more efficient through our technology gave me a lot of fulfillment and purpose. At the end of the day, like I feel the sort of the purpose that I have is to still very much be connected to the social good space, whether that's in the for-profit or nonprofit. I think that's just like a tax bracket. It has nothing to do with like a business or the model of the business. It's just a tax category. And so yeah, the purpose is just doing good through the lens of helping organizations, companies, fulfill their mission faster.
Yeah, I think there are two other components that we've talked about before. There's the helping the other nonprofits or organizations in general do their good work in the world. There's also an internal kind of like organizational culture you have the opportunity to embody and model for other organizations. So there's a good aspect to that. And then I think there's sort of the like broader cultural opportunity as you grow Fundraise and have more opportunities for you to be kind of speaking into leadership culture in different organizations, in different venues, kind of leading culture from a more external sense as well. How do you think about that? Let's go internal to your organization. Like, how have you started to think about what's good in Fundraise in the organization, and what are some really practical ways that you've embedded that into the organizational structure, operations, and culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we've been going at it for 10 years, and we've had plenty of failures over the 10 years in trying to get this right. And I would say you never arrive at sort of this like notion of being the best sort of employer that you can be. Right, like it's evolving, it's fluid, and it's driven by the people that are at your company too. I would say that like some like practical things that we've done is sort of like you think about sort of the environment that we're in or have been over the last like 8 to 10 years. It's like heavy. There's a lot that's happened. Like a pandemic has happened. There's a lot of like political turmoil. The economy has been like up and down. So people are going through lots of hard things and are having to just still live life through the midst of just a lot of chaos. Yep. And so one of the things that we implemented, I forget, it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, were like mental health days, right? Where we have unlimited PTO and we have really like generous like policies around that already, but what we found is like a lot of times people don't take the time off that they really need to recharge. And so we started these quarterly mental health days that teams could take, as an entire department, just to sort of decompress and take a break and reset. Are
those organized by the department? How does that work?
So each department head is responsible for determining the day that's going to be taken, and the team takes it. So yeah, that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Like nothing like like challenging, but I think it's finding opportunities like that throughout throughout your culture to really reinforce that like we are all people and we have to show up to work, we have to make money, we have to provide for our families, but it can be really challenging given what's going on, right, as well. So just trying to find ways to help support kind of in between those moments.
Yeah, that's good. Because the stats on like open PTO are that people actually take PTO less, even though it's like more freely available in a lot of situations. So I love the leadership role that you're taking in almost like mandating that for your employees to say, hey, we're going to organize this and we're going to like help you to step into it where you otherwise might feel guilty or like you're letting your team down if it's just kind of open. It's like, oh yeah, feel free to take a day whenever you want to.
Yeah. I mean, one other thing too, I'd say internally is it's a little bit less tangible, but I think important to like explore, especially if whether you're leading a team or leading a company. And I think that like we often confuse perks that you get for working somewhere as culture, right? Like, oh, like beer on tap or happy hours or whatever it is, right? These are like all things that like maybe people get excited about to come to work, right? But it's a perk. It's not going to keep people at your company. It's just something that someone looks at as like a bonus, a cherry on top, right? Culture is what I think culture is as a company is being able to bring clarity to what the vision is and how you're getting there. To me, like that will create, and I've seen this, that does create, and when culture goes awry, it's because there's not clarity and there's not a common understanding of what are we trying to accomplish as a company? What's our North Star? How are we going to get there? And I think that's equally as important to be communicating on top of like the mental health days or like the free beer, whatever it is. Like you have to have clarity and you have to be able to communicate that clarity to the team.
Yeah, I mean the free beer, even compensation, extrinsic motivation, it's external to yourself. The intrinsics is the meaning, belonging, purpose, like those things that are internally motivating for us to continue to step into the day. How do you, what have you heard? I know you have your like mission statement and all those kind of codified Fundraise statements. What have you heard from your employees? Like how would your employees kind of relay that sense of mission and purpose back to you as you're listening to them?
We've got one here. Maybe we could ask him.
You should ask.
Yeah. Whenever we onboard new people, we have like a whole mission, vision, values thing. I would say that it's not something that like we talk about in every we do like a monthly all team stand up, and then teams do like their own things. I would say like the philosophy I live by is show versus tell, right? So if we're gonna have these values, how do we show it as a company to our employees and to our customers and so forth? And so it would be interesting. It's actually you've got me like thinking like it'd be an interesting thing to ask employees. How do they perceive, how is the company living up to its mission, vision, and values? But it's not something that we come back to often versus like sort of new employee onboarding and so forth.
As we're getting close to the end, we will have time for a few questions. So if you have a question that you're thinking about, go ahead and just put your hand up. I will come and hand you the mic in just a second. We had talked about I know that like AI is a hot topic, and I just wanted to give you a second to like talk about how you're thinking about AI and what is the good, that kind of core question. I know that I've talked to many of you who are out here just thinking, okay, what's the like proper use of AI? Should I be using it at all? Is it just a benign tool like that we need to pay attention to? It could be used for good or for bad. How do you think about it? How are you implementing it in your company? How do you see it in connection to this question of what is the good?
Yeah. I think there's a ton of good, a ton of upside with AI, and there's the equal amount of bad and downside, right? And so I think threading the needle here is super important. About a year ago, we came out with a policy, AI first policy at the company, and we walked our team through it. Before we rolled it out to the entire company, we actually, probably 35% of our company are engineers, who are the ones today, ironically, the kind of the most in threat of AI, just because of how good AI has gotten at coding. And we met with our team, our engineer team, and we said, listen, like, it's not our intention at all to shrink the size of this team. It's our intention to see that every one of you becomes 100% fluent in AI, so that you are more effective. And what you can do the job of 3 people. That's what we want you to do. That is like our hope. It's not to shrink the team. It's to increase productivity of the existing team. So that was really helpful as a baseline. But really, how we rolled out to the company is, listen, the world is changing. This is probably the biggest shift like we've ever seen, and at least that last 100 years, I would say, and it's moving fast. And so our memo really to the company is, everyone needs to be naturally curious on how AI can impact their role. Right, from a productivity standpoint, from an efficiency standpoint, like, basically, how can that AI make you more valuable, and how can you create more value with the use of AI? And so that's where we've really focused our efforts and our energy around, and have created this policy. And we do, like, the question that I mentioned, it's called AI, policy is called AI first. And what that means is, if there is a problem with the business, or if there's a bottleneck, or if we feel resource constrained from like a headcount perspective, we always ask is there a solution that can be solved with AI first? And we start there, and then work backwards. So that's kind of how we approach it. And again, it's fluid. It is a moving target as quickly as like AI is progressing. Yeah. But I do think that every company needs to be prioritizing how AI is going to make their company more effective and efficient and relevant in this new era.
What can't AI do?
So right now, the LLMs, like large language models, they're not great at like complex analysis, right? So like on the financial side, like you could do some like pretty basic general things, but right now AI it's not perfect at reasoning, but if you follow any sort of like the robotic transitions that are happening, how fast actually robotics are becoming like human, I think that theory is being challenged, because these bots are starting to reason pretty well. But right now, AI, I would say, is it's hard for reasoning. The other thing is AI is not empathetic, right? And every business requires a level of empathy that is needed, whether it's to the customer, whether it's to the employee, whether it's to outside stakeholders, that AI will just never be able to do. We'll always need humans running companies and working with customers. And so I think that's something that will stay true.
Yep. A lot more to explore there, but we're going to take a couple questions. So, Melissa?
Sounds good. So what do you do when you have a pain problem that you know how to solve it, and you know that it's a problem, but you've got to massage your audience so that they know that this is a problem, because they're swimming in a culture that has abandoned beauty. So how do you market? How do you teach? How do you position somebody?
How do you bring awareness?
Problem that you know exists, but they don't know yet.
Yeah.
I would say that we had this issue pretty profoundly at Liberty North Korea, because when people thought it was really easy to raise money for an issue focused in Africa, right? I mean, like, that was sort of the definition of charity for a long time, right? For better or for worse. But going to Liberty North Korea and start talking about North Korea, people are like, why would we give money to that terrorist state, right? This is like the axis of evil. Like, what are you talking about? And so there was a lot of layers that we had to peel back. And then on top of that is the work that we were doing on the ground, like with refugee rescues. Faces had to be blurred, because if their family, if they were identified by the North Korean regime, their family in North Korea would go to political prison camps, right? And so we couldn't even show the faces of the people we were helping, and so it required just a lot of like trial and error, a lot of experimentation to get the general public to be empathetic towards North Korea, right? And so how we did that, there was not a silver bullet solution. We basically did a lot of different things. We sent college students across the country every spring and fall. 8 different vans would travel the U.S. and Canada and go to high schools, colleges, and churches and tell stories of the North Korean people and spread awareness. We would, so it was really about telling the story. It was the long game, 100% the long game. And usually, like, hard problems require the long game and really require a deep discipline to the long game. And I think that's sort of the main thing there. But a lot to unpack, but I would, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Another question? I don't remember seeing another hand. Jonathan.
I'm just stuck on this optimism that you talked about, and to me, hearing you talk about how important it is to carry this proximity to the problem and the pain, but that feels almost like it would leak optimism the closer you look at things that are hard, either whether it's facing your company or AI or even just the causes that you're championing. So how do you feed your optimism when you're trying to also keep an honest look at pain?
Yeah, so staying close to the solution. Right, and what I mean by that is, so Liberty North Korea, I was doing lots of different things. I was running rescue missions on this 3,000-mile journey, which you don't need to be re-inspired when you're moving 10 people that have never been, experienced freedom in their life. And to get them to a point where they now have freedom. You don't need inspiration for that, right? But then there's when you're back stateside and you're trying to convince people to give money to fund these rescues that really show very little empathy towards it. Then you start to get drained and depleted, and it's all right, I gotta get back into the actual work to be re-inspired, right? And so that was helpful from the context of Liberty North Korea, is being able to be on the ground so often and actually seeing the impact firsthand was extremely helpful and allowed sort of the optimism to continue. For Fundraise, a bit different. We're not smuggling people and getting them to freedom. We're building a business and we have stakeholders and we want to have a great outcome as a company. And so I would say the things that keep me optimistic and motivated are understanding, we're not a gigantic company in terms of headcount. Understanding that we as a company have a responsibility to the people on our payroll to do right by them, and that's a source of inspiration and motivation, right? The decisions we make as a company could impact these great people that work for us, and so we need to keep that in mind. And then the being close to sort of the original vision, the vision that led me to start the company 10 years ago is still very much the vision today, and reminding myself that we still have a long way to go to achieve what I want us to achieve as a company. And I think never being, I'm going to say this kind of attitude, I think it's important to never be satisfied with your progress. To stay hungry and determined and focused, but also to still celebrate the victories and the wins, right? Because it's important for morale and so forth. So I'd say those are some things that help keep me inspired. And then there's one other thing I want to say on the contrary to optimism, because optimism can also be a huge liability, especially when making business decisions that carry some risk. You don't want to do that just believing, it'll work out, right? You want it to be calculated. Optimism unchecked can lead to poor business decisions, and so I think that reality of balancing that is also really important.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to wrap up, but before we do, so many people in here are ideators in the early stages of creating something. Think back to when you've been in those situations. What is one piece of advice that you would offer them in those early stages? We've talked about proximity to the problem, the core customer experiencing that. Anything else you'd say?
So from my experience, I would say the most fun you're going to have as an entrepreneur, as a founder, someone building something, the most fun you're going to have is in the first 2 years of building the company. Before revenue, before customers, you're just 100% in the creative, state of there's very little that can go wrong in the early days outside of your idea not working, but there's just not a lot of external fires that you're focused on putting out that distract you, right? And so when I think about the past 10 years, the most fun I had at Fundraise is the first 2 years. Now, would I trade it for where we're at today? No, but your role and responsibility changes, and that's why I go back to you have to be obsessed about the problem, because as you start to scale and grow, your time is going to be focused on the things that nobody else at your company can or want to do, and you have to be willing to step into that role. And so, don't take yourself too seriously. Have a lot of fun in the first couple of years, because it will only get, I think, more stressful and more challenging. And so, have as much fun as you can in the first couple of years.
That's a good word. Let's thank Justin.
Thank you.